As usual, I will continue talking about paradoxes. I'll try to reconcile them. It is a hobby of mine, an obsession, uh, a pastime. There are two main reasons why am I keep doing this. The first one is paradoxes. They are very unnerving, very galling. Once you notice them, you you can't have them unseen anymore. Not only that, they will keep haunting you like a specter. Particularly at night when you are about to sleep, it just make you can't sleep. Uh, it is akin to like a pimple. You have a pimple, and then you can't help you once you see them, you want to pop the zit, or yeah, that kind of feeling. The second reason is paradoxes are also tend to be very compounding. I'm not too sure this is a bane or boon of life, but the more anomalies that you notice, the more anomalies eventually you will notice later. So they compound very in a very frightening manner. Uh, when you were 5 year old, you probably have only the ability to notice one small paradox out of 1,000. When you are 20 years old, as time passes by, the more things and more people you meet, the more things you engage with. Then you realize 30 paradoxes, all of them are connected, the seemingly unrelated domains. They are interconnected, and then later, when you're 30 years old, it might grow into 300 paradoxes because there are just so many ways to interpret things around you every single day. Today, the paradox that I want to give a try in reconciling is is an apparent contradiction between two really entrenched axioms that conventional wisdom that we have taken for granted. Um, the first one is the notion. Okay, maybe it's not a spoken notion, it's not spoken explicitly, but at least it is almost an axiom that is practiced by almost everybody, that at least from what I see. So this convention is, you tend to adapt and do whatever your community does. Uh, One very obvious example. So if you grow up in Germany, you tend to learn German language. If you grow up in Japan, you tend to learn Japanese language, and this is even more obvious in my country. So I'm born a Chinese, and this country, a very unique country, whereby I would say the segregation is really quite astonishingly bad. People just segregate among themselves within their communities, the Malay people, the Indian people, the Chinese people. And one obvious example is you can find a Chinese person in Malaysia who grew up his or her entire life in Malaysia not speaking Malay at all the while, every single day, the community that he's living in, he merely speaks Chinese. So that's sort of segregation. But in my country, it's very obvious that if you are born a Chinese, a lot of us would actually be primed into the Chinese pathway. You go to Chinese school, you learn Chinese Mandarin, you try to be you adopt a lot of Chinese tradition, and likewise the Malay and Indian communities are the same. Hence, this is the first convention that people practice. You tend to conform and follow whatever your community is doing, no matter the languages, the tradition, the behavior, the food you eat, the movies you watch. For example, my family is very Chinese. I grew up my entire life, the television is non-stop broadcasting only Chinese show. Even the cartoon from America is dubbed with Chinese translation. So this is the first convention people do. Okay, why do we do that? Okay, obviously it sounds so no brainer. You just I'm not too sure if it's even worth asking why, because it's just so self-explanatory. uh, because okay, for example, if you grew up in a Chinese community, why do you need to learn speaking Chinese? If you grew up in Japan, why do you need to learn Japan language? It's because you want to interact with people around you for survival. You need to communicate, you need to collaborate with people, the people around you. All of them speak Japanese, all of them speak and write Chinese. Obviously you want to do the same. You want to become the same as people around you, your neighbor, your villagers, your people in your cities, so that all of you could have a lot of similarities and commonalities. That implies that you will live well later. Yeah, so this is the first convention, and all these things seem very fine for me. For example, me myself, I grew up kept watching Chinese movies, going to Chinese schools. All my friends, 30 of them, 50 of them, the high school friends, almost every one of them is Chinese, with a very little exception. There are always a few Indians or Malays in the Chinese school, and vice versa. There are also Chinese parents who would send the Chinese kids to Malay school, for example. So this is the first convention. Obviously, it's good for your life. Is highly optimized. You become so slickly blended into your community. You become one of them. Yeah, things like that. Now I'm going to talk about a second convention, which is kind of horrifying when I realize that the second convention is related to how our economy works, so-called capitalism. Um, the playbook of capitalism, or actually capitalism might be a loaded word. I think fundamentally, even we go back to the Stone Age, few million years ago, maybe not million, few thousand years ago, we need to trade. We need to trade in order to become wealthier, to be alive. For example, let's say you are a really good huntsman, you are a really good hunter. You hunted a deer. Okay, so you use your time and energy and hunted a deer. And meanwhile, maybe I am a prolific blacksmith. I'm able to smell metals. I can make tools very well. So what do? We collaborate. I make all the spears and knives for you, and you in turn use those tools and hunt deer. So you use the deer in exchange for better tools. I'll give you more knives, more spears. So this is free trade. We make trading make people wealthier, because the fundamental economic fact is that uh, everything is scarce, particularly your energy and your time. You can do everything. So this kind of free trade is what the essence of capitalism. So let's not try to use this very loaded word capitalism. This second convention I'm going to talk about is the playbook, the fundamental nature of free trade. Free trade only works when we have enormous diversity. So imagine in a very, very hypothetical, nonsensical village, everyone is a hunter. Nobody knows how to make metals. Who is going to supply them better and sharper knives? Nobody's going to do that. And then eventually, their tools for hunting deteriorate so much in quality. They just couldn't hunt more and more deers. They eventually starve. So this is a very fun, very simplistic model, showing that when you don't have diversity, you don't have people with very, very different strengths, very, very different characteristics, you are gonna stumble into demise. It's very dangerous, and that is a playbook of capitalism. That's playbook of free trade. Not only you individually, the more different you are, the better you will, the more money you can make. Not only that, in a society as a whole, the more diverse people are, the wealthier the society as a whole. That's the reason why today we have people who are very good at cooking, people who are very good at making engines, people who are very good at dealing with humans. So we have this sort of diversity that only you could win. So I will reduce into one sentence: the fundamental playbook of making money is to be radically different. So different that you are the only person who could give something valuable, you produce something valuable, everyone actually needs you, so you can give that valuable thing to the rest of the world. And now let's div this first convention and second convention. First convention is you must do, it's good to do things that your community do. Try to copy them, whatever they do, whatever they wear, whatever language they speak. You learn the same. You are Chinese, you go to Chinese school. You are Indian, you go to Indian school. The second convention is to be radically different. According to the playbook of money making, to become wealthier, you have to be radically different. Hence, therefore, these two things are so at odds. It's very unfortunate, very poignant when I realized that. Obviously, just like you can't split yourself into two unless you have a doppelganger. Most people choose either one or the second convention. You can't choose both, and I think maybe you could use some trick to try to blend the two conventions, contradictory conventions. But what happens more often is people being addicted to the first convention. They just got sucked into it without asking why. There's a reason why. There are so many from what I see, so many people okay, at least for me, I used to have no non-Chinese friends until I go to matriculation. I went to university. My law school was full of Malay. But even that, because I was in my early 20s, I was so indoctrinated, so addicted to the so-called Chinese environment, and partly because of language. Most of the time, all the Malay and Indian people in my university were merely my acquaintance. I couldn't really mingle with them. So I was very addicted to the first convention. You just got very blended into your community. As a result, if you are like me, so addicted to a particular one culture, one type of behavior, the so-called first convention, the rule of blending in perfectly, immaculately into your community without any diversity. If you are into that like me, one very scary consequence is that you will never reap any benefit from the second convention, which is you will fail so miserably in the playbook of capitalism, the playbook of making money, the playbook of free trade. That is what happened to me. Because you are so homogeneous, you have absolutely nothing special. You can't trade with anybody. You can't have a stellar business transactions because you have nothing to give. Imagine you are in a okay. Let's say we have a hypothetical 1,000 person village. 1,000 of them are all hunters. How are you gonna be richer? You have nothing to trade with each other. All of you are homogeneously the same. Eerily homogeneous. Just. It's very atrocious. You just imagine a picture in a farm with 10,000 of sheep. None of them stand out. Nothing special. What could they do? They just keep grazing the grass. Yeah, and so I'm not too sure if why do people become so addicted to the first convention. Like this unquestioned dogma. If you're born a Chinese, you go to Chinese school. If you're born a Malay, you go to Malay school. And what is even more surprising is how do people continue to survive and thrive if they keep using the first convention and ignoring the second convention. And to be honest, the second convention is very scary, very frightening. I'm not too sure what is a limit. As usual, everything has a limit. So imagine in China, you are a person with, let's say you're Portuguese, you speak Portuguese language, you practice Portuguese culture, you go to China. Are there people who want to trade with you? Are there people who want to learn Portuguese language from you? That might be something too fringe. I'm not too sure. So I wish there is a mathematical model that could pull everything together to find out a balance between complete homogeneity and complete heterodoxness. Ideally, you want to have a balance, the overloaded word, the moderation. You want to be somewhat similar with your community so that you have some sort of similarities, not until Like imagine you are a Portuguese person who doesn't know Chinese word at all. If you go to China, you probably even have something as simple as communication barrier. But at the same time, if you are an immaculate Chinese sheep, all you know is Chinese, not even an English language. All you know is like the hypothetical hunter in a 1,000 hunter village. All you could do is inside the community. What could you trade with other people? Nothing. You know nothing special. Let's say you are in uh, maybe Hunan in a state province in China. All you know is about Hunan things, nothing other than that. All you know how to cook is Chinese food. All you know is Chinese language. You know nothing outside of your province. I'm not sure what could you offer to other people. As a result, most of the time, the very appalling consequence is the only thing you could trade is your labor, your hands, your limbs. So that's why people engage in this hard labor. You have nothing new to offer except your time. You can wash toilet, for example, because that is something that doesn't require diversity to do. And yeah, so this is something I want to lament about and explore about. I don't know at what point you should maximize diversity, at what point you should maximize homogeneity. Ideally, diversity is just this amazing attribute that would make us so rich. Even the idea of a Portuguese person existing in Malaysia next door to me, even though apparently Portuguese language has absolutely no value in my community, I think his or her mere existence actually make me richer, because without him or her, I would not be able to understand a new kind of language, new kind of culture, new kind of food cuisine. So I think extreme diversity for me is always good. I'm definitely on the second camp, particularly because I was the victim of the first camp. If I was in this immaculate Chinese school, with the benefit of hindsight, with the benefit as an outsider today, I went back to a Chinese school, high school, a Chinese primary school, and you try to look at the entire school compound from an outsider perspective, it looks so unbelievably dystopian. You look at all those 500 or 1,000 of students in the Chinese high school. I look at them. For me, right, all of them wear exactly the same clothes, uniform. All of them have exactly the same speak exactly the same language. Almost zero diversity. All of them behave the same way. This is unbelievably dystopian. These 1,000 people, I'm not too sure how are they going to survive in the future, except by doing hard labor work. Yeah, so we imagine if some of them have radically different skills or thought, then among 1,000 of them, 200 of them have a really different skill and thinking. Another 200 of them could really cook very different food. Another 200 of them could really speak different languages. So we have, among these 1,000 people, we have 5 sets of different 200 people. All these 5 groups of people could trade their cuisine, could teach each other new language, could teach each other new things to do. These 1,000 people will become so much better. I'm not too sure. I will try to think about this topic again. See you. Goodbye.